if I never discovered Stoicism there is no way I would have been able to stand as straight as I've been standing against Craig for 4 years, for example, because these 4 years have been nothing but threats, harassment, potential for very dire consequences all the time. So just making it second nature for me to never put a lot of stock into things I can't control, but put everything into the things I can control. That always just opens up so much space and calm for me to realize and be very aware of, can I control any of this? I think words can constitute huge barriers in communication without any one of the participants realizing it. For example, the word God. To me, if I was gonna tell what do I think of with this word, it's definitely not something that's situated inside one entity somewhere. If God exists, how I see it, or if I'm gonna define God, I would say it's everywhere, and it is the spark, the good impulse, the love, the rationality.
Before we dive into the show, we'd just like to mention a couple of our show's sponsors, things that we care about and that we think are useful to Bitcoiners all over. So first up is the Orange Pill app. Download the Orange Pill app today from the orangepillapp.com.
Yeah, Orange Pill app. Woo! Rocket ship, get on board.
It's available for iOS and Android. Stack friends and meet like-minded people near you. Connect with your favorite Bitcoiners and speed up hyper-Bitcoinization. We're really excited about the Orange Pill app and its potential to connect Bitcoiners in their local area. Download the Orange Pill app.
It's not a dating app, but you can use it for dating. Download now.
Next up is Wasabi Wallet. It's a great desktop wallet that has privacy by default and CoinJoin built in. It recycles your UTXOs around so that no one knows who you are after it's done the process. Check out wasabiwallet.io. Make sure that that's the actual link you check out because there are scammers out there who want to steal your Bitcoin. But it works in the background. Tor is built in. And when you send coins to it, the coins you take out are private. So download Wasabi Wallet today.
I'm wearing these shades in tribute to Wasabi Wallet because your OPSEC is important. So I'm totally anonymous now, just so you know.
Hello and welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. We're concerned about your freedom footprint and want to help you spread as much freedom dioxide as possible. I'm your host, Luke the Pseudo-Finn, and I'm here as always with Knut Svanholm. Good evening, Knut.
Good evening, Luke. Nice to be back. Things are great. The Christmas and New Year's are over and I started working again and, getting my shit together and all that reality stuff coming back. And yeah, I got a new node up and running here. So I'm planning to integrate BTC Pay server into my website and a couple of things like that. And working on the Praxeology book, trying to come up with ideas for this little short story for 21 Futures. So that's what's going on in my life at the moment. And you?
Excellent. All good on my end. I'm unfortunately back at my fiat job after a couple of good weeks off, but that's life. Gotta keep stacking somehow. So the keen-eyed among you might have noticed that we have a space cat among us, and it in fact happens to be the space cat, the one and only Hodlonaut. So I think we might as well just get you on the show. And thanks, Hodlonaut, for joining us. Welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show.
Thank you, Luke. Great to be here. Way too long since I've been talking to Knut. So this is a great opportunity and very nice to meet you too. So looking forward to it.
Welcome, Hodlonaut. It's been way too long. Mr. Cat here is one of my favorite people of all time and one of my oldest and dearest friends in the Bitcoin space. So it's great to have you on. Great to talk to you as always.
For the benefit of our listeners, do you mind giving a quick introduction to who you are in the Bitcoin community and, of course, preserving your anonymity?
I can try, at least. First and foremost, I'm just a regular Bitcoiner. I'm a pleb, 100%. I'm not out here to build a brand or monetize myself or monetize my presence in the community. I happened to start this community project called the Lightning Trust Chain is what I called it, the Lightning Torch back in 2019, because I was super fascinated with the Lightning Network early on, and that the Lightning Torch was that project or whatever you want to call it, experiment, it happened to become quite viral and caught the attention of a lot of big names and companies in the space, and got a lot of media attention. And I think it, in some ways, put the Lightning Network on the map back in 2019. Very much unplanned, but that got me a lot of attention, which led to me getting targeted by Mr. Craig Wright for saying that I believed he's a fraud, which I still believe. Since then, it's kind of been battle after battle in the court systems. I'm still involved in two separate legal proceedings in Norway and in the United Kingdom, which has gotten a lot of attention from the community, and it has gotten me just an amazing amount of support from the community, which I will forever be thankful for. And I guess that's how most people will know me, if they know me, is probably for this fight against Craig.
Yeah, and that's too bad, because the whole Lightning thing, I remember that vividly, and that's like when you skyrocketed into fame. And I remember seeing it playing out live, and it's a pity that you're more associated with this fraudster at this point and your legal battle.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? It doesn't bother me at all, to be honest. What I think is more of a pity is just the sheer amount of time I've been forced to spend on this, because it has literally been a job for 4 years for me to do what is needed at all times to not, lose against Craig and enter personal bankruptcy. So it's a fight every day, I would say, and it continues to be. So that is kind of my job for now. And then I look very much forward to free up a lot of attention and time in my life when this is all done.
Yeah, and you've been doing a great job at it. You won the court case there a couple of months back, and if I remember it correctly, Craig has sued you again and taken you to a even higher court. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he appealed, obviously. I mean, he's appealing everything all the time. So there will be a new trial in Norway. Probably be much worse for Craig than the first one, since, I mean, every day that passes, we just uncover more and more stuff from this guy. And I mean, we have 2 hours of testimony from him from the first trial, which uncovered a lot of interesting claims and facts that we will be able to pull up again in the appeal. So I'll be there, and I'll definitely beat him again.
Yeah, good to hear. The way I saw it before this trial was like, if you win or lose, even if you lose, Bitcoin wins, because like if you're winning, then we're taking down this asshole and we're showing people who the real what the real deal is here, and the difference between Bitcoin and the shitcoins, basically. But if you lose, we point out a flaw in the juridical systems, and then Bitcoin wins too. So like all roads lead to Bitcoin winning. But yeah.
Not worried about Bitcoin at all. I think what motivates me the most and like has made me completely unwilling to compromise on this, because I mean, Craig wants me to acknowledge that he is Satoshi Nakamoto, and I will never be able to do that, of course. But I know that this is a fight that needs to be taken by someone in the community, and because these guys are just, all the time doubling down, suing new people. Now they're going to start going after people with their patent claims and companies. So until Craig is like soundly defeated in court and exposed, this is going to continue hurting people and companies in the Bitcoin space.
And just to give the listeners a clue as to what this means, like if you would have just taken Craig's offer like 4 years ago, how different would your life have been? It would have been way easier for you. That would have been the easy way out, right? Pretty obviously.
Yeah, he wanted me to to be present in a court of law and under oath testify that he is Satoshi Nakamoto, and I now like know that. But if I was for some reason willing to do such a thing, then it would all go away, of course. And I would be free to go. I would also not respect myself, which is kind of important.
Would you have to pay any fine or anything if you had done that?
No.
So you so this asshole basically stole 4 years of your life, or like forced you into focusing on taking on this battle.
Yes.
And I guess most people in your situation would just have found the whole thing overwhelming and just said, yeah, okay, you're Satoshi, who gives a fuck, and then left, right? I still believe that there are many Bitcoiners out there who don't really know about the sacrifices you've made over these years, because time is money. And for a talented guy like you, time is a lot of money. So you've sacrificed a lot for sure. But let's not focus on that.
No.
The only person in the world who isn't Satoshi.
Yeah.
He is boring and uninteresting, to say the least.
He's not boring in the sense of being very fertile ground for quality memes, I would say. Like, he's very, very meme-worthy.
Yeah. And he could be interesting to a clinical psychologist for case studies, maybe. Maybe he's going to sue me too after this episode. Who knows? Come right at me, Craig. Let's see what you got. So you're the founder of, like, that's how our relationship started to, become something more than just two guys knowing each other on Twitter. It's because of Citadel21 Magazine.
Yeah.
Whom I'm sorry to say I haven't written for quite a while, but I was on it quite often in the beginning, in the first couple of issues. I used to write a lot for it, I guess. How is that going? Well, what are the plans for Citadel21 Magazine?
Interesting timing on the question, because you have written either 3 or 4 articles. I'm not completely sure, but I loved all of them. And I think they became, like real cool pieces of cultural history in Bitcoin. Like, you had some really cool angles. I mean, I mentioned the Commodore 64 article before as one of I was such a Commodore fanboy back in the day. So that hit home for me. And it's been a while since you had something in there. And why I said the timing is interesting is we have decided to cap the scene count at 21. There are only 2 volumes left to be published, actually. We have one dropping now at 21st of January, and then volume 21 of Citadel 21 will drop on March 21st. So if you have any time to spare, and if you want to be in the final volume in March, we would be honored to have you again.
But I have to do that now.
I just want you to know that.
No, I'm honored that you want to have me in the last issue. Of course, I'd like to produce something for that.
That
would be so awesome, because like my history with that, those articles did way better than I thought they would. Of course, you have the everything divided by 21 million, which is from an article called Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole.
Yeah.
And there's one called You Are Not Prepared, about hyper-Bitcoinization, which is also became a bit of a meme.
Yeah.
The Commodore thing, we had a lot of great conversations about that.
I think looking back at this, because Citadel 21 has been running for a good while now, and looking back at these articles, I think it's really cool to read about these things, like, for example, everything divided by 21 million, which has matured into a much shorter form meme. But, to see the early versions of all kinds of thoughts, I would say that, kind of come from a little unfiltered in many instances, all kinds of different flair or perspectives in there, which I'm pretty happy and a little proud of what we have created with Citadel21, and looking back at it and having the physical copies in my hand, looking through it and knowing that me and Katja were part of capturing this culture, that it's very fleeting and it's changing all the time, of course. And the Bitcoin community, if you want to call it that, or maybe you want to think about it as Bitcoin Twitter, it has changed a lot in 2 or 3 years. It's matured, and some of the things that was very novel and new and created a lot of enthusiasm is now kind of old news and just like part of the common shared past that we have as Bitcoiners. So I'm happy to have been part of that project, and Citadel21 will continue to live on in some other form. I'm not completely sure what we will do with it, but we will put something out there again, but not in the same, it will not be a magazine the same way it is.
Can you disclose the reasons for shutting it down, or is it just, we're at episode 21 here, we should stop here?
Yeah, there are several reasons that together made it a pretty clear decision. Like the most boring reason, or maybe the reason that's kind of out of our control, is basically financial. We have been running in the red with Citadel21 every single month for maybe 16 months now, basically just bleeding money every month. And that's not sustainable. I mean, that's the opposite of stacking sats.
Why is that? Are people canceling their subscriptions or what? Because I remember subscribing in the beginning, and then you gave me another subscription, so I get the double amount of magazines. But
no, it's just a matter of not selling enough magazines. Easy as that, because we have quite dramatic, and the expenses of printing have gone up 150% since COVID started. Shipping has kind of doubled. We have expenses. We pay the designer of the scene a good amount of money, so it just doesn't work out financially. That being said, we do have a huge piggy bank of scenes, because only volume 1 is sold out, and the other volumes have, everything from 200 to 600 copies unsold, which is a lot of money that we, may capitalize on going forward. I do believe every single scene will sell out at some point, but it's not covering our running expenses.
And there's 1,000 copies of each one, right? And they're all numbered.
They're all hand numbered. There is only one print run of 1,000 copies, and that's it for every volume. No reprints.
Pretty cool stuff. And yeah, I moved out of my old house in Sweden here during Christmas and New Year's, closer to New Year's, and unhung the old Citadel21 Volume 2 poster that I have. The
Martin Fisher poster.
The Martin Fisher poster, Cypherpunk now. Yeah, and it's so beautiful. It's such an original piece of art. Yes. I mean, his style is completely uncopyable.
Yes.
So that's just one piece of Bitcoin artwork. I found some other stuff at home as well that I've been receiving over the years, and it's just
that's one of the things that I think sometimes when people say that I'm humbled or that humbles me, it sounds kind of cliche, but the honest to God truth is that every time I receive something from one of these Bitcoin artists, I feel so humbled and, almost a little like I'm not worthy of receiving this amazing.
Yeah. It almost drives you to tears. I mean, it's so,
yeah, it's really cool. Especially the post review. Especially that post about this is a good example of it. It's just, I mean, you are like depicted on the poster, and I can immediately somehow see that it's you.
Yeah, it doesn't look like me, but it does the job of, people know it's me.
Felt something about you. Maybe it was because you were obviously the author there. I'm not sure, but it's such a cool cool vibe in that poster. I noticed Giacomo also sometimes has it in the background when he does podcasts.
Yeah, and Katie the Russian has it in the background as well. She is also on this. So yeah, what a bunch of people to be.
What a beautiful circle jerk, right?
Yeah, the best circle jerk. It's like, that gives me goosebumps just talking about this stuff. So yeah. So the last issue, you're to publish it on the 21st of March then.
Correct.
Yeah, but I should be able to squeeze something out till then, and it will have to be good. It will have to be on par with the other stuff. So yeah, I need to do that for sure.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you were kind of motivated to put that together, Citadel21?
Yeah, sure. It was, my fiancée, Katja, Bitcoin Katja on Twitter. We became a couple late 19, early 20. And she is like a super good artist, I would say. She has a lot of talent in different directions with creating stuff, including designing and drawing things. I'm like more of a words kind of guy, even though I feel kind of bad. I write way too little, but and both of us had this history when we were younger of these scenes from different subcultures. I was familiar with them both from the football scene. That's two types of scenes, SCENE and SZINE. But and also from the computer space, like Amiga and this demo scene in computers. So, and I always liked how it felt so raw, and it was ruthlessly focused on the people inside of this culture. Didn't give a fuck about if some average normie understood anything what was written. It didn't matter. It was like a very narrow publication, and the benefit of that is that the signal is so much stronger when it's read by someone who is inside this group, and you can go much deeper and explore much cooler things because you don't need to spend 3 pages explaining what Bitcoin is or why we think it's cool. So we decided that we wanted to try and recreate such a scene for Bitcoin culture because there was so much cool art and music and all kinds of philosophical musings and creative thoughts that we wanted to display this somewhere because we weren't happy with CoinDesk or Bitcoin Magazine. At the time, I think Bitcoin Magazine has been kind of embracing a lot of the same things in a way after we started doing it. I think actually they got a bit inspired. We had a talk with them not long after we launched. But we wanted to have zero editorial policy. We wanted the signal to be, a little toxic and raw. And that's what we did, I guess, with Katja doing the design and me doing the editing and the curating. That's how it started.
Yeah, so stop what you're doing right now and go to Citadel21.com and order those remaining copies of those issues that haven't sold out yet. Get your hands on them before it's too late.
Wise words.
Yeah, you're going to run out of them. So shameless shill there, of course.
They will sell out at some point, I'm 100% sure. And those who own Volume 1 right now, which is sold out, are quite happy about that at least. And I know they sell on the secondhand market for far more than the list price.
Yeah. I'm at least 21% sure that they will sell out at some point.
Well, it's a great story though, and the philosophy of Citadel21, I completely understand, and in a lot of ways that's what we're doing here. A lot of the assumption is that our listeners are Bitcoiners, and we are doing some things that are pushing into other fields, but mostly in the kind of praxeology philosophical avenue, which is what Knut has been doing a lot of lately. So it's kind of like if we are getting new people in, it's new people who are coming from outside Bitcoin coming for the entire other side of the conversation, if that makes sense. So they might get some Bitcoins from osmosis, but outside of that, the assumption is just that, well, if you've made it here, you already have this to start. And that cultural understanding, I think, is helpful because, as you say, you can go deeper. And that's different from something that's trying to be accessible to people who are just figuring it out and people who are maybe sort of midway in, but not quite so deep. You can't go deep for everyone. And I think that's the part of the purpose of going through that here. So nice to hear that's what you were thinking of.
Yeah. You couldn't, or we couldn't, even if our motive was to make a lot of money, which it obviously wasn't. I mean, the first year, Citadel21 was just, it's still 100% free to read everything on our site. And we have never had any kind of ads at all, not anything. So there has been no one there to tell us what to do in any way. I think also it has been made quite apparent that when you are ruthless and non-compromising in your publication, the reason why so few want to be that is because they're afraid of alienating someone. They're afraid of, losing sales. And we have basically done everything we can to lose sales since we started Citadel21 because we have never accepted anything but Bitcoin for selling our magazines. You can't pay with fiat. You can't pay with any kind of other shitcoin. It's only Bitcoin. And we have always paid everyone working for us, like the printing, the design, everything is paid with Bitcoin. So it's a circular Bitcoin economy. And every artist, if you know a moderate Bitcoiner or someone who wants to hold on to their shitcoin fantasy in some way, if they open one copy of Citadel21, they will never want to buy it because their fantasy is shut down mercilessly on every page. No punches are pulled. So it's basically, we don't cater to a huge demographic basically. And that's kind of part of what we wanted to do, we don't, I would never want to, create something that was watered down just to please someone. I guess if this was our only hope of making money, I'm sure we could make a really cool magazine while not selling out, but it has enabled us to be even more pointing our nose at people than we probably would do if we were very conscious about maximizing sales.
This is how you build integrity, and this is how you build. You may not realize it yet, Mr. Cat, but this is long-term branding. Like you may not have a huge audience, but it's a great audience.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the best audience you can have.
Yeah.
So it's pure signal all the way.
Yeah. I just love, I love low time preference, and I love to just stick to my guns on something if I can, if there's any way to do it. Just, I don't want any reward for it. I just want to do it. But I've been doing it for a pretty long time in a couple of different ways now. And somehow it seems to work,
But it is hard. When you exit fiat and you start living and breathing Bitcoin, and getting your income in Bitcoin and, spending some of it to eventually when you run out of fiat, it's a tricky thing because you have this, urge. I think it's there's something very human and, so something in the male brain that's deeply rooted, that you want to have your numbers be black every month. You want to have a positive cash flow and not a negative one, because it feels much better.
Gains.
Yeah. And it's a tricky thing to sell stuff without selling your soul. Of course, it's a very tricky thing to balance, because the way I see it is that you can only sell your soul once, and there's no refund.
Yeah.
And you can nibble away little pieces of it. Like, you can claim that me selling T-shirts for fiat is selling my soul to a certain extent, and that's true. Even though it's, you're nibbling away at something that you make more valuable by sticking to your guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, if your integrity is your soul in that sense. That's the way I view it. And the thing, speaking about this, is a good segue into the big thing that you introduced to me that is tangent to Bitcoin, and that is Stoicism and the philosophy of the Stoics and Marcus Aurelius. You're the first one that mentioned that, and like that's the closest I'm ever going to get to a religious view.
Yeah,
I guess, but it maps on perfectly to Bitcoiners and you in particular, because you're like made of stone or some marble or something in terms of low time preference. It's pretty. So you're Stoic, and can you tell us a little about what Stoicism is and what it has done for you and all that?
I can start with saying that if I never discovered Stoicism and never got red pilled on Stoicism and made Stoicism like a very central piece of my operating system, there is no way I would have been able to stand as straight as I've been standing against Craig for 4 years, for example, because these 4 years have been nothing but threats, harassment, like the potential for very dire consequences all the time. So just making it second nature for me to never put a lot of stock into things I can't control, but put everything into the things I can control. That always just opens up so much space and calm for me to realize, like, and be very aware of, can I control any of this? Like when I was in court, I have never had my feet inside the courtroom before. I had no idea what to expect. And it had the potential to be very stressful, of course, but it kind of ended up being very okay, I think, because I was constantly aware of like everything Craig's lawyers were saying, and like the whole stage, all the cameras and CoinGeek and all this bullshit. It was just out of my control. So I just didn't throw my energy at it. But what Stoicism is, I mean, it's a philosophical system which is derived from the thoughts of especially Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. It teaches you to basically, it teaches you that what is causing you most of the grief in your life is aversion and desire. This is pretty much, the same thing as Buddhism is teaching, with a very different pair of glasses on, I would say. Stoicism is much more rational. It's just it always talks to the Western rational, logical side of you, which made it very revolutionary for me, made it very true. Felt like just so apparent that, wow, it's possible to think like this. It teaches you to, when you are in your daily life, things happen. And if we haven't got any kind of mental discipline, we will put labels on everything that happens to us. We will okay, that was really bad. That was bad. Oh fuck, that happened. Instead of going looking closer and was this bad? Why was it bad? Could I control it? Could I? And instead we should turn our attention to, what can I do that is good, since this thing that I couldn't control has happened to me? And that just, it feels like a superpower every time you just change the perspective like that, because suddenly you are in full control, and any small positive thing that you do is just fucking great, because it wasn't, and sometimes it will be like people will look at you and like, whoa, how did you like manage to react like that? And that's just, because you didn't accept all the consequences that your brain wanted to label on something that happened to you. I see so often that things that happen to me, which initially could seem really bad, but when you put low time preference on it and like wait it out a little bit, and you just react to it rationally and like to the best of your ability. And this thing that initially seemed like a disaster turns out to be the biggest positive blessing in your life, or like the entrance to something really good in your life. So I think Stoicism is like anti-victim philosophy.
Yeah, that's such a good way to put it. I mean, Stoicism and Praxeology, learning about the two has done so much good things for me. I guess I was always a bit of a cynic, using humor and dad jokes to cope with the reality, try to be somewhat clowny facade. But Praxeology made me appreciate other people a lot more. And Stoicism, I guess, made me appreciate myself and reality more. Like you realize that you're not in control of that many things, really. So when you actually manage to control something, you appreciate that you can influence something a lot more. And you're, as you say, you're not bothered by the outside world as much, because you build up this mental shield so that they can't get to you if there's nothing to get. It's like the thing that comes to mind now is Heath Ledger's Joker, but it's not a good representation of it. Mm-hmm. But in a sense, he has that, you can never get to me, because all your threats and all your strength and all your violence, I'm impervious to it because I don't give a shit about it. Yeah. And there's something powerful there, even though he's the bad guy in the movie, but there's something to that like, I really, the first few things that were sort of stoic behavior that I imposed on myself was during my years at the Merchant Marine Academy around the early 2000s. And I used to miss the bus all the time in the morning. So I slept for too long and I missed the bus. And I always ran to the bus, and then it drove away anyway. And I could see the goddamn bus driver in the rear view mirror sort of smirking at me and then leaving at the last fucking second, because that's his only joy in life, is to deprive me of my ride to the school. Yeah. So, and I got so pissed at him and so pissed at myself. So one day I just told myself, that's it. I'm never running to public transport again, ever. If I miss it, I miss it. Fuck it. So I could control that impulse to run and follow the timetable. And what followed was that I was never late to the bus again, because it sort of inadvertently did that to me. Yeah. And it's the same thing when the other thing was like, I used to live in Malmö for a couple of years, and I got they used to one day each month you couldn't park on the street outside our apartment, and I always missed the date, and I got a parking ticket. A parking ticket is irritating, but the thing is, you're going to have to pay the parking ticket anyway. So being mad at it is you paying for it twice. So, and you don't have to do that. So like, and then what you realize over time is that like no amount of anxiety is ever going to change the future. And no amount of the regret is ever going to change the past. You just have this present moment and your experiences.
It's going to change your ability to enjoy the present and all the presents that are coming on this chain in front of us all the time. Yeah,
because they truly are presents in both senses of the word.
You kind of, by choosing to not run, you kind of tempered your desire for a specific outcome. with the specific outcome being that you actually got on the bus, and instead just told yourself, I'm just gonna, walk to the bus. And maybe that led to you actually walking at a time where you probably were gonna make the bus before it ran away. But just the thought that this immediately leads me to is, before I discovered Stoicism, I was entering into almost all situations in a very different way than I do now, because I was entering into situations and conversations and relationships and everything with I was always working for a specific outcome. I wanted people to agree with me. I wanted to convince people that what I was saying was right and more right than them. I always wanted a specific thing to happen, consciously or subconsciously. By doing that, you kind of apply a little bit of force, or a little bit of stiffness to both your own mentality and the situation itself. And I think letting go of that and just having more focus on what you put in instead of what comes out, because what comes out is always going to be a result of a lot of factors that you can't control, but you can control what you put in, and then just put that in and enjoy whatever comes out. And then sometimes much more fascinating and creative and meaningful things come out as a result of kind of this letting go a little bit of trying to control everything. I think that is kind of related to low time preference as well, by the way.
It is. It's also related to the dropping your ego thing, and there's something there for sure. Even though dropping your ego is a term that can be interpreted in many different ways. I mean, an ego is not per definition a bad thing. It can fuel your fire if channeled correctly, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, I had my period I tried to be like the most virtuous person in the world. I was so into basically very spiritual, I got to know a lot of very interesting people, and they were so spiritual and they were so good at meditating and all of this. And I just wanted to be to suspend my ego and, but it's so first of all, it becomes fake over time because they're trying to force something. And second of all, it's just terribly inhumanely boring. I mean, there's so much fun to be had by embracing your own flaws and embracing that obviously we have an ego, but there are many ways and perspectives to approach it from. And in some ways, I'm sure I have the biggest ego. And in some ways, I've been able to, temper my ego very much.
I think you would be lying if you said you didn't enjoy waking up every morning and looking yourself in the mirror and say, I'm fucking Hodlonaut. Yeah, so Stoicism, maybe we can make a course on Stoicism on Emerli's app. This is one of the things I'm doing at the moment. I'm doing this Praxeology book, and that's going to be turned into a course. We had a brainstorming meeting yesterday about that. And this Emerli's app looks really cool. It's like Udemy meets Substack powered by Lightning Network. So you can do courses, and people can get their sats back if they finish the course. And you can set up all sorts of solutions for that, and teach people about stuff. Santos told me they're doing or planning on doing, I hope I'm not doxing anything or giving something away here, but planning to do a whole exit the matrix type of program. So university program, basically, for people who want to get the fuck out of society. So you have a Praxeology course and a Stoicism course and Bitcoin course and a be your own farmer type of course. A lot of practical engineering skills would be good to learn there too, some electronics and stuff, and you just get out. Yeah. And I think it sounds like an awesome idea, like a university for hermits. Yeah.
Speaking of, you mentioned praxeology again. Can you give like both how you got into it and like what it represents for you and in itself?
I was curious about Austrian economics and the Mises Institute before Bitcoin as well, and libertarian thoughts. But I didn't know that it was an actual science until after. First, the Bitcoin Standard, Seyfedin Amou's book, of course, guided me towards what to read next. So I've read Human Action twice, and it's the best book I've ever read because it fleshes out this type of scientific thinking, lays out very clearly why you need a different approach when studying human action than when studying like the motions of planets and stuff. Because empiricism doesn't apply to it. It can't be applied to human decision making. If it could, then the universe would be deterministic, and we wouldn't have free will. And we have no. Of course, we have free will. We have no choice but to have it, as Christopher Hitchens put it. So that's what I believe. We have to at least think we have free will in order to, engage in anything at all. So that's one of the assumptions praxeology makes, that people have free will. So if you agree that people have free will, then you can make a couple of other assumptions about human behavior. And this is in praxeology they call axioms. Just as in mathematics, you assume some self-evident things to be true. Like 1 + 1 = 2. It's true because we define 2 as 1 + 1. So it's sort of, you can't really argue with that. And in the same way, the first axiom of praxeology is that human action is purposeful behavior. That's the definition of the subject matter. Like purposeful behavior, it's something you do out of your own free will. And the second axiom is man must act, which is also pretty self-evident, because if you don't act, you die pretty quickly. You must deliberately lift the glass in order to drink water. And if you don't, you die. Of course, praxeology makes the distinction between voluntary action from free will and just plain instinct, which would be like, we would probably breathe without acting deliberately.
But I think, can I just throw something in that, like the polar opposite of procrastination, and people who are in the grasp of like very serious procrastination, that's basically like dying, I think, because it kind of makes them in some, almost like they have a spell on them that they just can't act. It's like just continuous problematizing and intellectual activity, just that doesn't lead to anything.
Well, it's on a spectrum, and that spectrum is from high time preference to low time preference. Mm-hmm. And I think the higher the time preference, the more instinctual the action, sort of. So if you're procrastinating a lot, it's probably because you have a high time preference, because you value the dopamine hit in the present more than, some reward you could have reaped in the future from sowing a seed in the present.
Also, like they're not even aware of the alternative of like reaping some other reward in the future. You're just,
because you've been conditioned to have a high time preference for all of your life, and like you've been taught that in school, and that's so, like when you understand praxeology and you realize why it isn't taught in schools, and that's the depressing part of it, because it quite clearly states that kidnapping kids every day for 12 years is probably not it's pretty clearly not an optimal way of running a society. It does not lead to an optimal amount of ends sought being met by people's means, because praxeology quite clearly shows you how much more powerful voluntary interaction is than involuntary interaction, especially when money is involved, because all involuntary interactions in a system where people can make economic calculation fucks with that ability to do economic calculation. So as soon as there's, criminal behavior or like taxation or inflation, for instance, on a regular basis, then it becomes way, way harder to make economic calculation, which means that people will adopt a higher and higher time preference, and it will lead to what you're describing, throngs of people procrastinating playing PlayStation all day, eating cheese doodles. But I wandered off there a bit, but the big difference between praxeology and other sciences is that it's an a priori science, which means that the assumptions it makes are not derived at from empiricism or things you study after a phenomenon has happened, but you deductively reason yourself to the conclusion before. So you can't disprove it with experiments. You can't say, hey, look at this society here. That wasn't real communism. And all of those arguments do not apply to praxeology because it never claims to prove anything empirically. Mm-hmm. It only claims that you can figure these things out from first principles thinking and by reason alone. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that's why I like it so much. I think that's why I liked mathematics the best in school, because you didn't have to study, you just had to get it. And I think that's why I like music too, by the way, because it's in between beauty and, something you can calculate. And it's just in between there. And that's what praxeology is too. It's very close to being a branch of science that actually can derive an ought from an is. Of course, no science can do that, because that would mean that you put some subjective value judgment onto the science itself, but it can tell you how much harm, involuntary action can cause. And it's endlessly fascinating to me. And I think you would love deep diving more into it if you haven't already. Hey, Luke, can you tell our listeners a bit more about the Consensus Network, the platform that this show is on, and the publishing house that publishes my books? What is the Consensus Network, Luke?
Thanks, Knut. The Consensus Network is a Bitcoin-only publisher and translator. In other words, translates Bitcoin books into all sorts of languages. Anyone who's interested in translating a book into their language can get in touch with the Consensus Network to help translate and spread the Bitcoin message throughout the world. We have lots of great examples here. Knut's books are some of the most popular on the site. Check out consensus.network or bitcoinbook.shop to see everything that Consensus has to offer.
That's bitcoinbook.shop. Use the affiliate code Footprint for 10% off.
Knut, can you tell us about how to get in touch with you and find out more about your stuff and the things that you're involved in these days?
Yeah, sure, Luke. So I'm at Knut Svanholm on Twitter. I also have a website, knutsvanholm.com, where you can find all of my books. There's a whole bunch of books. These old two ones, Sovereignty Through Mathematics and Independence Reimagined, are being rehashed into one book that's coming out with a foreword by Prince Philip. I'm also making a wine. I'm not making this wine, but this is a wine bottle with a Bitcoin bee on it that you can sign up for on my website. And you can also find all sorts of Everything Divided merch if you're interested in that. So that's how you support me.
Yeah, which is the first book I should read if I want,
Human Action is a 38-hour audiobook, but that's like that is to praxeology what, the origin of the species is to biology. I'm sure I'm offending someone by saying that, but so that's, okay, let's use the term. It's the Bible of praxeology.
Yeah.
It felt like, why am I not aware of this? Why has this not been taught to me before? So that's the big one. Yeah, the other books, I just want to mention them before we go on, because Max Hillebrand recommended two of the best books I've read in my life to me. When you're a bit deeper into praxeology, I think you can jump straight to these. One is called The Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard. and the other one is called, has the most sexy title ever. It's called Economic Science and the Austrian Method, by Hans Hermann Hoppe. And those two books are those are the most mind-blowing praxeology books I've read so far. Then there are others like Anatomy of the State, which is a very short book by Rothbard, just describing how rotten the state is and why it can't be anything else than that. There's another short book by Rothbard on education. There's one by Hoppe about the short history of man. There's a lot of stuff. But I guess Human Action is a book everyone should have, every self-respecting Bitcoiner should have ticked off their list at some point. Like, I never got through Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I thought it was too boring. I couldn't keep the.
How far did you get, by the way?
I got a couple of chapters in, but I couldn't keep the.
It's probably the book that I can remember reading that was hardest to like get through the threshold before it started to flow. But I mean,
but it's really good. Yeah,
I think so. I think if you ever.
Yeah, I will at some point. I'm sure I will. And Ayn Rand was best friends with Mises, by the way.
Yeah,
they have a very similar backstory and fascinating lives in general.
It's so crazy to, like you said a few minutes ago, like why didn't anyone tell me this, or why didn't anyone teach me this? Like
they didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, the schools didn't know, or the politicians didn't know. Or
I don't think the schools knew. I don't think the politicians knew. And if you remember Scandinavia back in the 70s, I mean, Human Action was written in the 50s, late 50s, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly. In the 70s, when we were born, slightly doxing you there, Scandinavia was quite left-wingy.
Oh yeah,
and it was very taboo to talk about free markets. I don't think anyone was aware of any libertarian philosophy at all. I mean, Mises himself believed in a small state, even though he couldn't clearly articulate why that was necessary. The thought of no state at all was still very foreign to him. So I think it's not really until Bitcoin that we have an actual shot at ever achieving a society where violence isn't that profitable anymore. Where like it's so bleeding obvious that voluntary interaction is way more profitable than violent interaction, and that's pretty far into hyper-Bitcoinization too, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But just the thought of that actually being a possibility is like, that's what sparks the lasers in my eyes. That's like what fires them up. You know what I mean? That's what fuels the lasers in the laser eyes. Like the thought of this actually being possible.
It's striking how my entire journey in life, from being like a fully ignorant young man to discovering and opening up one small box at a time. It's just been so many instances of feeling that what I was taught was just wrong. And it was, so wrong that it was even almost like it was designed to prevent me from discovering something that was way better or more meaningful. The level of curating information that is being taught to the broader masses, and the signal coming from government and media is they've just done such a good job of filtering out all the important shit, I think.
Yeah, blaming the free market. They were very efficient at that. People think it's capitalism.
Yeah.
And, there are greedy assholes out there, but there will be way fewer greedy assholes if we had sound money, for sure. I mean,
if the game wasn't rigged to facilitate greedy assholes, it would be less greedy assholes.
Great deep dive into two branches of philosophy, Stoicism, Praxeology. The Stoicism is new for this show, so nice to kind of get a little bit of a toe dip in there.
Praxeology isn't a philosophy, though. I wouldn't call it a philosophy. I'd call it a science, and I'd call it a way of explaining. It's basically just reasoning. That's all it is. It's like, why do we do things?
Do you think philosophy has become like a dirty word?
Somewhat. I had a great conversation with Troy Cross, who's an actual philosopher, a couple of months back about this. And, of course, I'm paraphrasing here and putting words in his mouth maybe, but I got the feeling that he thought that the philosophy taught in universities is basically a dick measuring contest of how many, Schopenhauer quotes you can.
Yeah.
Like, we all value words differently, as praxeology can tell us, but as we value everything differently. And if philosophy is a hijacked word, I definitely think that is one of the words we should hijack back. Mm-hmm. Philosophy to me is thinking about the meaning of life and thinking about life in general and purpose. And that's how I define it. And I'm not ashamed of doing that a lot. Like, if people want to call me a philosopher, I guess I am one. I've spent countless hours thinking about the meaning of life, and so I'm a philosopher.
I think I would definitely put you into that category.
You too, by the way.
Maybe. I think it's just interesting because I know how, like, if I wanted to trigger you, I would immediately start pulling up like cards containing the words religion and God.
Why would I be offended by those?
No, just that it seems to me like you think, like the word religion or the word God, or that you think religion is a problem, or like at the very least a path that is not worth traveling. That God is. I mean, I would not call myself religious at all because I don't follow any defined religion. But I, like, in my the meta internal space, like words like God, and after having read quite a lot of different stuff that I found interesting, like Bhagavad Gita from Hinduism, and this text and Stoicism and the Bible. And when I was young, I was taught Christianity in school, and we were forced to sing Christian songs every day, and we prayed before eating and all that shit. And I was never comfortable with it because I thought all these stories I was being told about what happened, they seemed so unrealistic to me, and how they were told me, I didn't buy it basically. But as I've grown older, I would definitely say that these words, like God and I mean, maybe not religion, because religion to me just means that you're following dogmatically some kind of rule book. That's
what it means to me. That's why I think statism is the worst.
Because I feel, I mean, since I got to know you, I feel that we basically agree. I think if we get the chance to, to talk it through, that we have a pretty similar framework, I would say.
I think the word that is misused more than God is the word atheist. Because to me, atheism just means that you admit that there are stuff that you don't know, and you refuse to jump to conclusions.
Is that okay? But
so you refuse to take things at face value in that sense. So it's atheism. It's not religious. Like, there is no theism in it. Like atheism. That's like, what it is.
Theism, doesn't that mean belief in God, or?
Yeah, but if you believe in anything really that you can't prove, or that you don't have, sufficient evidence to support, or, I mean, I guess all kinds of beliefs require a certain appeal to authority somewhere, but first principles thinking is a good guiding light here, I think. but for instance, when I say I'm an atheist, almost every Christian assume that means that I believe in evolutionary theory and the Big Bang theory, which I may or may not do.
Yes.
But that's beside of the point, because the word atheism has nothing at all to do with what I believe in, what other things I believe in that are more or less scientifically proven. So you're following me here. So I think the word has been diluted by the theists because they think it means something that it doesn't. It's like humans have this in them that because one thing, when they realize one thing isn't true, they automatically take the opposite position and believe the conspiracy theory instead, or they change the meaning of words to mean the opposite. When this is just a word describing that, no, I don't buy it. I don't think there was a virgin birth, and if there are 3 guys showing up at your door when your baby is born, and you're the carpet that didn't bang your wife, you should raise an eyebrow, especially if they bring gifts. So the thing is, what I mean by that, and what I think most people who say they are atheists mean by that, or at least what I hope they mean, is that they don't believe in God, or they don't believe in a creator or a higher being or a deity. I've made some observations lately. For instance, that Pascal's wager, who I've always detested Pascal's wager because it excludes every other type of belief there is, and you just apply it to, like, if you believe in God, then and God exists, and you have this matrix of good or bad things that may or may not happen to you, but it discards every other belief you may have and all the other 5,000 gods. But what I've noticed is that Pascal's wager actually works on Bitcoin. If you believe in Bitcoin, and if you act, as Jordan Peterson says, I act as if God exists, my paraphrasing of that is, I act as if Bitcoin exists, because if I do, then I actually increase its chances of actually existing. So Pascal's wager works on Bitcoin, which is just mind blowing to me. It's so weird, and it truly turned my world upside down in that sense.
Yeah.
It did not make me believe any of the other stuff, and I think even people tell me to take hallucinogenics and psychedelics all the time. I haven't tried any yet. I'm curious about it, and they tell me about all these, things that you experience that will change the way you look at life. But I still have this nagging feeling as maybe it was because you took a pill that happened, and not because reality was actually altered. So I have a very big skeptic in my core. That's and that skeptic has provided me with a lot of value over time. So I'm not giving that up very easily. That's
for some reason you come off as a little bit spiritual, despite everything you say now. You have
I am, but spirituality to me has nothing to do with religion.
Oh, well, but maybe, because I think words can constitute huge barriers in communication without any one of the participants realizing it. I think, for example, the word God, to me, if I was gonna tell how do I think of with this word, it's definitely not something that's situated inside one entity somewhere. If God exists in how I see it, or if I'm gonna define God, I would say it's present everywhere, and it is the spark, the good impulse, the love, the rationality. In Stoicism, rationality is basically God.
But that's where I have a problem with that particular word, because first of all, everyone has a different definition of it.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is why it's so hard to describe atheism as well, because it's just none of that. None of those things you defined as God. But since everyone has a different definition, and what you just described with a lot of other words, there are obviously a lot of other words for, because you just use them.
Yeah.
And none of those words, including even the word soul or purpose or whatever, none of those require there to be a greater power or because to me the word God, if there's any need for the word at all, it needs to mean something that was either a creator or a something that has influence, some entity that has some influence on something. Because if it's out of our, if it's influencing, it's doing something on purpose. Otherwise, the word is pointless.
Yeah,
but to me, let me finish this thought thread, because it's one of the latest arguments against this notion of a creator or someone influencing something that I've come to. And it's like, if it's purposeful, if it's engaged in purposeful behavior, that implies that it's not omnipotent, and it cannot have eternal life. Because if something is indestructible, omnipotent, and has eternal life, that being would have no incentive whatsoever to do anything ever. Because Praxeology tells us that we evaluate our options and choose one over the other, because we all have a positive time preference. So we want something sooner rather than later. We can postpone and we can choose between different actions, but we all have this value hierarchy in us. And if time wasn't an issue, that value hierarchy wouldn't be there. So if you have eternal life, you can postpone every action indefinitely, and therefore you would never act. So a God that exists in the universe as we know it wouldn't act at all. And a God that existed before the universe, even though time started at a specific point. So for lack of a better word, we use the word before, because there is no real before time. But that being, since that being wouldn't interact with whatever, or couldn't interact with whatever we exist in now, because of the very nature of existing before everything else, and if it was interacting with everything else, the dilemmas I just described would apply. So a being like that, it wouldn't matter to us if a being like that ever existed or not. That's as arbitrary as saying that we live in the Matrix, or there are multiverses, or multiversa, or that there are that the universe is a simulation. We will never know, and we don't really need to know, because all we need to study is whatever we're experiencing, what reality constitutes here. What I do like is the meme theory of everything, if you've ever heard of that, which is like that reality is really just objective reality is where subjective realities converge. And that, if that is true, so we experience Jupiter, for instance, because we all can see Jupiter, and it's there because we all experience it, and the subjective experiences can't clash, because reality and the timeline we live in is basically just where these all the consciousnesses of the world collide. That would explain why we the Fermi paradox, why we haven't seen life outside a certain time horizon, for instance, because our consciousnesses would never converge with those beings' consciousnesses, so we wouldn't like. And there's all sorts of strange things there. I'm going to just stutter a lot and not make myself very, very clear. I need to write something about that in order to get my head straight around it. But there's something there about objective reality being where subjective reality collides because of quantum mechanics and all of that. When we observe something, we alter a state of reality, which might be another universe, or it might be the hand of God, or it might be blah, 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 blah. Or it might just be that reality is where all our subjective evaluations of it converge.
You said something about that Bitcoin kind of made, what did you call this? It made
Pascal's wager. Yeah.
The wager like true.
Yeah, it's applicable to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is God in that sense.
Yeah. I've never kind of stopped being mind boggled about how enormous it is that we have this entity called Bitcoin that just produces objective truth all the time.
Yeah.
And how potentially crucially uniting that is in a world where everything becomes ever more subjective. And also on the note of the subjectivity, like you touched on the concept of psychedelics or entheogens. And I think that their use as instruments to basically open up more and enhance the bandwidth that you can perceive truth is pretty profound. And that humans operate on many different frequencies and levels in terms of how much bandwidth they have, I think. But the more, like, if everyone was getting lost in entheogens and went really deep on reality and theism and religion and everything, that would even make it more crucial that we have something objective that's just non-negotiable that we can unite around and build.
Yeah.
And the fact that Bitcoin is that in a verifiable way available to everyone is very, very, brings me a lot of hope. And I think the future is very bright on the Bitcoin standard.
Yeah. To say some profound shit here, isn't it funny that the closest thing we had to, absolute financial atheism, which is, from the chapter in my book there about Bitcoin being financial atheism, because all its predecessors require some form of belief. And Bitcoin is the type of money that requires the least amount of belief because you can verify every step of it.
Yeah.
So, and the funny thing is that is the closest thing to God we've got.
I agree.
So I would say we live in year 14, based on that.
I agree.
So, year 14 of our Lord. Which is a much better starting point.
In terms of the potential for cult-like behavior, I think we haven't even scratched the surface of what Bitcoin would kind of make possible. Because it is somewhat of, it turns into religion really fast, for me, at least. And when I say religion, take that in the best way possible, like more like, it's
an epiphany maybe, or like an emancipation from, I would say it's an emancipation from a cult.
Yeah, I guess.
Because fiat is the cult, and like, it's not a cult if it enables total individualism. It can, by definition, it cannot be a cult.
I think I suffer from. I only talk to Bitcoiners basically. I don't have too much patience or interest in talking with other people. There are too many good Bitcoiners to talk to. So phrases like toxic, for example, to me, toxic, like for my mom or like the average person in the street, toxic means like that you're a bad person. But for me, toxic,
you're poisonous.
Yeah. But for me, toxic is pretty much like a badge of honor, because what happened was that Bitcoiners were called toxic, and then we were called toxic by people. It was so ridiculous that we were called toxic that we kind of just mimified it. And that was kind of interesting when I was in court with Craig, that Craig's lawyers, again and again and again and again, read up a couple of my tweets where I had said something like, thank you to all the rabid and toxic Bitcoiners for keeping it real or something. And he said, thank you to all the toxic and rabid Bitcoiners. Keep telling the truth. Like as if I was, appealing to the worst possible parts of humanity, and
yeah, that's so weird.
And the same thing when I used the word cult, like a couple of minutes ago, it's the same thing, just because Bitcoiners, you're such a fucking cult. And then I immediately stopped taking the word seriously and kind of it just takes on my own memeified version of the word. I think I will probably run into trouble in the future when I talk to non-Bitcoiners because my vocabulary is, a result of the meaning Bitcoiners have put into words more than how the words work from the Oxford Dictionary.
Keep in mind that the Oxford Dictionary is getting updated by the cult of statism all the time. Like they updated the
vaccine.
Vaccine was one word. What was the other?
Vaccine.
Woman.
Yeah, woman.
I'm pretty sure one of the dictionaries put in a thing of like a certain usage of the word woman is considered offensive.
That's another thing with, perceived problems with feminism. For instance, like when they say there are only X% women in this doing this type of work, and what exactly is the problem?
Yeah.
Because what's the problem with that? I mean, I truly don't see a problem with there being a certain percentage of anything in anything.
Isn't that just a manifestation of free will and people doing what they like to do?
Yeah. And so what if women like doing whatever a woman is, if they like doing certain stuff more than like, what is the problem again?
Yeah.
Like, you just can't wrap your head around it.
Especially it becomes especially ridiculous when, they use the word diversity so actively all the time, but so we're supposed to be both diverse and, exactly the same.
Yeah, we're just supposed to have different skin color and gender and then go bad, just in the same way as the next fucking sheep. But
I stopped paying attention to a large degree to it. It just became too much. So I'm not even up to date on Clown World narratives, I think.
Clown World is like, look at this latest. I mean, I loved the Marvel Cinematic Universe when it first came because I was a huge Marvel nerd when I was a kid.
Oh my God.
So I loved it up until this phase when all of a sudden it's a cinematic universe where there's a female version of every fucking superhero and everyone think it sucks. And, of course the movies are tanking because like the female protagonists, they get all the benefits and they're super powered, from the beginning. They never have a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the male superheroes, they have a journey and they start at some low point and they're like, but the female heroes, they're all overpowered from the get-go. And that's been a trend in Hollywood for such a long time now. So, but I think there's a big backlash coming. People don't want that. They don't want, elitist, force feeding of bullshit narratives.
I wouldn't watch a Marvel movie if you paid me for it. I think that must have been a really sad journey I'm sure that universe was pretty cool before it was captured by the wokesters and
yeah, it was. And and they really portrayed the heroes the way they should be portrayed. Like that, it was very true to the comics in the beginning.
Yeah, and then like other series as well, like the new Lord of the Rings one.
I'm not touching that.
The Witcher on Netflix, I'm particularly annoyed about that one. Just not adapting things correctly and changing characters and stuff, all in the name of making it more accessible and woke and all this. Yeah, not good.
Terrible. I got the impression, I haven't watched it myself, but this new Avatar movie, what I'm hearing is that it is kind of okay. I was sure that was going to definitely be terrible.
Yeah. The thing I heard is that at least it has a patriarch as the hero. He's the father of the family and he protects his family. So that's the non-woke part of it. I haven't seen it yet, but I hear a lot of other things. Like James Cameron says that he had to cut out some scenes with guns because he doesn't like guns, and he went, "You're James fucking Cameron. Like you made the Terminator and Aliens, and they're shit full of guns. Those people love those movies because of the fucking guns." Like,
oh, well, you're supposed to be ashamed of your hectics and your upbringing.
Yeah.
And the blue people were also there wasn't enough representation in the blue people, something like.
Oh yeah.
So it actually made the wokesters complain. So that's nice.
Like there weren't different hues of blue.
I don't even pretend to understand the argument, but I think it was that they didn't have enough indigenous people consulting on the representation because they must be based on indigenous people.
Or maybe they didn't have enough people of colored blue in the movie.
Right.
I mean, do you remember the first Avatar movie?
Yeah. I watched it quite recently with my daughter, actually. Yeah.
I tried to watch it with my boy, but I only got through half of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like when they start using like those, their hair is some sort of USB interface that they can plug into the Space Horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it doesn't fucking do anything. It just makes you train, like you'll be able to ride the horse a bit faster if you use the interface.
Yeah.
Like, and there's so many, I mean, outright completely stupid things, and it's just too much.
Think of it as a very shitty unit in Starcraft 2, like a unit you never wanted.
I've been playing a bit of Starcraft lately. We should play it again sometime. We've been too long.
Let's just do it one of the coming weeks. I wanted to. I've been watching Starcraft again.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a really good YouTuber who did some videos recently.
Many good casters. I mean, that game keeps growing on me in terms of it's just so complex. Just the micro and the macro. It's amazing spectator sport.
It is. And people don't know about it, and they laugh at me when I say, no, I'm not interested in football. I watch StarCraft 2. It features, robots and aliens blowing each other to pieces at breakneck speeds. And these are just some overpaid people chasing a ball and pretending to get hurt all the time. Like, so I don't get it. Why is that interesting?
I mean, I think at least anyone who enjoys chess, if you like chess, like StarCraft 2 is just chess on
steroids.
Chess version 10 or something. So yeah, maybe I will take the initiative to set up a small Bitcoiner StarCraft 2 tournament or something. I think that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of players.
Some players out there.
Yeah, and we'll all be equally bad because we're, calm and slow and think things over for hours on end. We're not, it'll be good fun.
Good macro and terrible micro.
Just like the opposite of Bitcoin then.
Macro is the low time preference, right? Micro is just this high time preference shit. We can just
but Praxeology tells us that there's no such thing as macro, so it's all micro, really. You have to think of the individual drone and marine and
Praxeology is pissing on my theories.
Maybe as to try and hook into a slightly different segue here of Avatar here. I'm a bit curious, Hodlonaut, about your feelings on anonymity as you've had this journey over this last few years, starting off as an anonymous pleb and then getting called out for that and everything. And what does your anonymity mean to you in current context?
I mean, it's last 4 years that's definitely made me reflect on the concept of anonymity, I don't think I have any left, even though, still on podcast, I prefer to keep what I can, but Craig has really, and Calvin has gone very hard to make sure that my name and face and stuff is available out there forever. I do think, obviously, or I don't know if it's obvious even, but I do think that anonymity and the ability to express yourself anonymously is crucial. Absolutely crucial. Because I have been feeling it myself. I used to be anonymous as Hodlonaut, tweeted about basically the same things I tweet about right now. But at one point I got a job, like pretty high profile job in the Bitcoin space, where it became very clear to me how much of speech in today's world is a little bit taboo, because suddenly I was in an environment with, the big league corporate world here in Norway. And like when you are employed in a big company, like any speech, especially for you when this Hodlonaut, and the media made a big deal of it, that Hodlonaut had started working for this company. And they started here and there printing my tweets on different subjects. Like I said something like, how important it was to not use mainstream media, for example, or like just opinions that counter the norm and the narrative. And I can 100% clearly see that for 90% plus of people, the reality is that because of social consequences or the professional consequences, people are simply not able to express themselves freely. They will self-censor. Some will only self-censor a little bit, but everyone will do it to some extent. And if we don't have a way, like if honest opinion is penalized, then we have no hope of having honest discussions, obviously. So I think it's imperative that somehow humans are able to express and discuss amongst themselves in an anonymous fashion.
I need to play the devil's advocate here, I hear.
Yeah.
Because this is a subject that I've changed my mind on completely since reading Rothbard's The Ethics of Liberty, is particularly. Because I was always a huge free speech advocate. But as Rothbard points out in that book, the question we forget to ask ourselves is free speech where? Because free speech implies that there is a public space somewhere and a public property somewhere in which we can have free speech to a greater or lesser extent. But property rights are more important than freedom of speech right. Like if your property hadn't been taken away in the first place, then everyone would be free to say whatever they wanted on their property. And they could also set the rules for whatever they thought anyone else should say on their property.
Yeah.
And this is, I think this has to be the basis for the debate. Like, the problem with social media censorship is not that these companies censor their users. It's that they're influenced by political forces to censor their users, because there is a market for a free speech platform. And in most circumstances, people should second guess themselves and self-censor when talking to people. If you're at a party at someone's house, you better not tell the host to go fuck themselves. Like, that's, in a way, it's self-censorship, but it's a functioning type of self-censorship. The problem is that the morals are all skewed and people do things for the wrong reasons. And social media has become virtue signaling platforms instead of
I don't see any kind of conflict between being nice and speaking 100% freely. I mean,
me neither. Not in a perfect world.
Just the result of being civilized and having good intentions. That's what keeps me from telling everyone to fuck off. I mean, I'm generally a very polite person to people, and I will never disrespect anyone who hasn't given me very ample reasons to disrespect them. But just to what you're saying, I totally understand what you're saying about property, and that obviously any property owner should be able to dictate what happens on their property, and that goes for Twitter too. Unfortunately, Twitter was not themselves choosing what should be censored or not. They were fully captured by the woke left.
Exactly. Yeah.
So until we have this fully decentralized platform that maybe Noster can become, I think Noster is very promising. Maybe at least it's the platform I have the most hype about since all of these attempts started coming with Mastodon and different alternatives. But I think it's if we are going to end up in a good place as a civilization, I think it's crucially important that we manage to bridge the gap between now and the future, where we have this decentralized platform where there is no property, because it's just an open protocol where anyone and everyone can block or participate however they want.
There's property there for sure.
Yeah,
it's everyone's computer, and we can choose what information we let in or not.
Exactly, but that's
how it should be.
Yes, exactly. Because I think it's just completely impossible to understand for me that someone says it's censorship to block some. I mean, that's not censorship,
No, and that's so weird. And people get so upset by being blocked by someone. What the hell do you know? What do you know about the reasons for blocking? People use Twitter as a tool for.
It doesn't even matter, I think.
It doesn't matter at all.
Then that's their absolute privilege. And 100%. But just to finish what I was saying, I think it's just so important that because Twitter was and is the closest thing by a huge margin to having a public square, a global public square where everyone can speak and say what they mean. And it has a chance of going viral. It has a chance of being picked up by subclusters that are connected to your subcluster. And, it can spread, and you can jump in and debunk something completely outside of your cluster and stuff like that. So I'm just so extremely thankful to Elon for to a big extent opening up again on very important narratives. And people underestimate how much brighter the present is, because Twitter has now reinstated voices that have, debunked, criticized, and gotten super important information in front of millions. And these Twitter files, the importance of the Twitter file, I mean, they should have led to immediate tribunals, and, people should have been sitting in jail already from what is in these Twitter files. But that's not going to happen, I think. But still, it's Elon's or this new Twitter policies that is the reason that the narratives that have been suppressing us very harshly, and for me, obviously, were planned and they were planning to screw the screw tighter. But they are falling apart right now. And we need a place where these evil narratives can keep being challenged until we have this future where we are, where we have escape velocity in terms of communication.
Yeah, beautifully put. I'm having a bad conscience for not having checked out Noster yet. I definitely should. I think I just heard about it like a month ago for the first time, and you still feel bad for not having tried it out yet. So it's
Are you on iOS?
no.
They have a pretty decent iPhone app, which makes the
No, I have an iPhone. Maybe I should try it on that.
I think it's the most like simple way to, because if you use that, it's so easy, just super easy. So you can be up and running in 5 minutes, and it's super active for Bitcoiners. And I mean, the numbers are pretty impressive in total as well, but I don't see Nostr getting any kind of critical mass for years and years. But I think it's, if nothing else, it's really cool that the social fabric between Bitcoiners can be backed up on this platform where no one can just turn it off, So if we follow each other on Nostr, then that's a good way to make sure that our communication will not be censored.
That's good to know. I should get it up and running. And while we're at it, we could mention Orange Pill app in the same sentence. It's a centralized alternative, of course, but it's a shout out to our great sponsors in the Orange Pill app. Regardless, they're helping Bitcoiners come closer together. Hodlonaut, this has been a fascinating 2 hours almost. We're coming up on 2 hours, and I just realized I have the weekly Free Madeira meeting in like 8 minutes from now.
Yeah,
and so I think this is a good place to wrap this up on. Fantastic to talk to you again. I found the conversation fascinating, and we need to talk more often.
Yeah,
I mean, we had a.
Time has flown.
Time has flown. We've both been busy. I've been busy with more pleasant things than you have, but
I had a lot of pleasure in I managed to squeeze in a lot of pleasure too.
Yeah, nailed that son of a bitch. But yeah, I hope to see you at some of the conferences this year. You're always welcome here whenever you want, of course.
We booked for weekends until like March-ish. So, but I would really like to get to some conference this year.
BTC Prague is that's a high signal one.
Yeah,
it's going to be a lot of good people there.
Yeah, and regardless if I make it there or not, I would also maybe like to try to just gather a few of us plebs somewhere in some Nordic forest place.
Or a Spanish fucking beach. That's also a possibility for us. That, I mean, cross country skiing is fun and all, but
Nordics are nice in the summer.
If you have a sauna and a couch, Knut, and a guitar, I think you're good.
I have a guitar and a couch. I have to work on the sauna, but if you choose the right month, we won't need a sauna.
Yeah, no, I was thinking. So I managed to lure you up in some snowy Scandinavian forest.
Yeah, forest.
Just keep you far away from the skis and you will be okay.
There's never a bad time for a sauna.
No.
Never a bad season for sauna.
No. I enjoy a sauna just as much as the next guy.
Definitely. Yeah. Great talking to you guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
Take
thanks
care.
a lot for this, Hodlonaut. Appreciate it, and nice to have you on, and nice to meet you.
Take care, Mr. Cat.
Take care, guys.
Till next time.
Later.